It's tier list time, baby, so let's grade every top 40 player season in a tier list format, because evaluating one season purely on their place in the rankings is just boring. I want to start off with a bang. I want to start off with one of my favorite players on tour, and of course I'm talking about Holger Rune. He undeniably did less than people expected of him this year. Early exits in 2 of the 4 Grand Slams, 2-7 record against top 10 opposition. 0 titles won throughout the year is simply not good enough for a player of Rune's talent. There were 2 solid Masters runs sprinkled in, but I fear that it's not enough to get him out of the D tier zone, which is where he will end up going. But on the brighter side, I feel like this season will be that one step back that is needed in order to take the 2 steps forward. Following up is a guy who on the contrary exceeded everyone's expectations. It's Taylor Fritz. There were few blips in his season like Miami, Monte Carlo and Cincy Masters, but in general that was an incredible season for Fritz. To end the year with the US Open and ATP year-end tournament finals is amazing. To add to that, he played the second week at every major this year, won 2 titles, severely improved his play against great opposition, made Zverev his son and reached his career high in the rankings, which is why even though there were some doubts, I feel like this was an S tier level season for the American. Up next is the most surprising Masters winner this year, Alexei Popyrin. Alexei had one great month this year, but in August he won in Montreal and went to the round of 16 of the US Open, where he got destroyed, obliterated, pummeled by Francis Tiafoe. But other than that, he had a below 500 season if we take out August, so I just can't put him any higher than the B tier. I don't want to go in on the next guy too much, but he kinda leaves me with no choice. Stefanos Tsitsipas was disappointing this year, but thankfully for him, he did kinda lock in for the clay court season, so it wasn't all doom and gloom. His Monte Carlo title run was very fun, which he followed up with a final in Barcelona. Quarterfinals in Rome and the French Open were solid as well, but before and after that he simply was an average ATP Tour player, which lands him in the C tier. Matteo Arnaldi definitely played tennis this season. Based on every parameter you can analyze, he was just a slightly above average player, which is not bad but definitely not remarkable either, so he swiftly goes into the C tier. Moving on from one Italian to another, let's talk about my comeback player of the year, Matteo Berrettini, who started the season in 154th place and ended it in 35th, and he did that whilst overcoming multiple injury woes throughout the year. He won 72% of the matches that he played this year, won 3 titles, played a crucial part in Italy's Davis Cup victory. And even though his Grand Slam results were lacking, I still think that this was an A tier season for Matteo Berrettini. I feel like I've been too positive this video, so let's rank some dusty player next, and the first on the dusty player list is Sasha Bublik. The guy won 1 tournament and thought he could fool people. No, he was solid in only 2 tournaments this year, and it clearly isn't enough to get out of the D tier. Nuno Borges gave Nadal his last ATP loss of his career, which in itself is something very memorable, but other than that he had a pretty up and down season. Great run at the Australian Open was followed by an average North American stint. From Bashta till US Open he was good, but after that his end of the season was derailed by a wrist injury. So even though there were some highs, I feel like this was a C-level season for Nuno. Coming back to another standout this year, let's talk about Alex de Minaur. Everybody knows that he was exceptional this season. He reached his career high ranking, won 2 titles, but it does feel like he could have achieved even more if it wasn't for the injury at Wimbledon. It compromised his last stretch of the season, and honestly speaking, I'm not sure that we will see Alex at this level ever again, so it feels like we were robbed of a peak Alex de Minaur, which is unfortunate, and to add to that sadness, I won't put him in the S tier, I'll put him in the A tier. I do not have much to say about Francisco Cerundelo's season, and when that's the case, I'll put that respective player in the C tier, which will be the case for Fran here. We saw a relatively fit and healthy Jack Draper this season, and it paid dividends, especially at the end of the season. Semis at the US Open, title in Vienna, career high of 15th that was reached at the end of the October are all great positives, but at the start of the season he wasn't that exceptional. And that is why he will go into the B tier, but in this instance, B stands for best is yet to come. Flavio Cobolli had a good season. He started the year just inside outside of the top 100, and throughout the season he rose to the ranking that's good enough to be seeded at the majors. But with that being said, I feel like he didn't have that defining win or a tournament run this year. So because of that, he won't be in the A tier, he'll join Jack Draper in the B tier. Novak Djokovic achieved his dream, he won the Olympic gold, he completed tennis, but he wasn't the usual Novak in many instances during the season. Was it because of a possible loss of motivation? Honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that this season was a B tier season for him at best. It was another disappointing season for Felix Auger-Aliassime in 2024, and I'm starting to lose faith. He literally hasn't changed anything. It legit feels like we are watching the same guy stagnate for a few years now, and yes, I'm aware of the injuries, but it cannot be an excuse for every shortcoming. So, Felix's season goes into the D tier, and his Mickey Mouse Madrid run cannot save him from it. Artur Fils ran the 500 tournaments this season. He was 17-4 at that level, which means one thing: when the tournament name didn't have a 500, at the end of it Artur was below 500, which in a way is a cherry-picked stat, I agree, but at the same time it shows that in the big tournaments he lacked something, which is okay for the 20-year-old, but it eliminates him from the A tier, and because of that Artur goes into the B tier. Now let's talk about the player with the unluckiest draws this year, Tallon Griekspoor. Just listen to the names that he lost to this year: Sinner 4 times, Zverev 4 times, Alcaraz 3 times, Dimitrov 2 times, Djokovic, Minaur, Rublev and Ruud once. Obviously, he had some bad losses against Scotto, Stricker and Passaro, but 17 out of the 30 of your losses coming at the hands of those guys is unbelievably unlucky. And considering the fact that he held his own in most of those matches, I cannot bring myself to put him in the lowest tier, so he goes into the C tier. Carlos Alcaraz won 2 Grand Slam titles this year. It was a magical run from the French Open till Wimbledon, but I just don't know, it still feels like he wasn't at his best for the majority of the season. Too many stinky losses, too many underwhelming tournament runs make it impossible for me to put him in the S tier, but 2 Grand Slam titles are 2 Grand Slam titles, so Carlitos goes into the A tier. Hugo Humbert is a hard one to rate because there were some sprinkles of greatness like the Dubai and Marseille titles and Paris finals, but in between those results there were times when he was straight up bad. Like everything that happened after Monte Carlo till Wimbledon was subpar, so I can't fully grade it as a super positive season, but the positives outweigh the negatives, so Hugo Humbert goes into the B tier. The man who is always on the brink of doing something special, Grigor Dimitrov, is going to be one step away from the A tier here as well. I understand that he played great throughout the year, but apart from that Miami run, he wasn't exceptional, so B tier seems fitting. Now let's do a quick fire round. Hubert Hurkacz was injured a lot, so he is in the C tier. 2 Chileans, Nicolas Jarry and Alejandro Tabilo, need to thank their lucky stars for their great starts of the season, because if it wasn't for those, then they would be in the F tier, but miraculously they'll go into the C tier. Karen Khachanov was consistent as always, but not special, so he gets into the C tier. Thomas Martin Etcheverry played well on clay as always, but he improved on the hard courts as well, so respect to him, and see ya in the B tier. Sebastian Korda goes into the C tier, and for him it stands for can't stay healthy tier. Jiří Lehečka stunk at the end of the year, but he was in some good form before that, so C tier it is. And to end the quickfire round, Sebastian Baez is definitely a tennis player that I care about. C tier. I might be a bit lazy with this one because I want to group Thomas Machac, Lorenzo Musetti and Sami Paul together. All 3 of them played lights out tennis at times, played their best seasons to date, and that is why they deserve to be in the A tier. It's as simple as that. Who could have predicted that Giovanni Pecci Pericard will be a top 40 player this year? Well, I did, but I'm a genius of this sport, so it's understandable that I got it right, but I'm talking about people like you, the stinky peasants that are watching this video. Did y'all believe that something like this could happen? Okay, I'm not that much of a dickhead, I'm just joking around. I appreciate the people that are watching the channel really much. But seriously, the majority of tennis fans weren't even aware of Gio before this season, but now at the end of the season he's a borderline top 30 player, and the sudden rise deserves a spot in the A tier. Like, do we even have to talk about Sinner? Bro had one of the best seasons ever. It's obvious that he's going into the S tier, so let's not waste our time here. Brandon Nakashima had a nice resurgence this year, rose almost 100 spots in the rankings in comparison Thompson to where he started the season, but this was a slow, uneventful grind apart from the US Open, so I can't place him any higher than the B tier. Casper Ruud is like a cockroach, but in a good way, cause you just cannot get rid of him. A lot of people thought that the last year was the start of his regression, but that was not the case. He stayed true to the surface that brings him the most success. He capitalized on his opportunities. He finally won a tournament above a 250, and then to end the season he advanced to the semis at the ATP finals where he was in a group with Zverev and Alcaraz. Like, that is just crazy, and for that ability to get the best out of almost every situation, Casper deserves to be in the B tier. I'm getting tired of Andrei Rublev, tired of his predictable outbursts, tired of his tennis never changing even though it doesn't work against great players, so he goes into the C tier cause I'm just tired of pretending that I care about the guy. Ben Shelton had a very average year. I don't remember a single big win for him this season, and he went down in the rankings as well, so that is why he is going into the D tier. At 30, Jordan Thompson was able to produce his career best season. He won his first title ever in Los Cabos, won the doubles title at the US Open, and in general he became a very tricky opponent for the top players on the tour, and that is why I'm placing him in the B tier. I genuinely don't know how Daniil Medvedev stayed in the top 5 this year. Uninspiring, annoying, and subpar would be the words that I would use to describe the season for Daniil. The guy was on the losing end of the most annoying matchup this year between him and Jannik. When he was losing, he always bitched about something, and if he was any lower in the rankings, he would get crucified for doing the things that he does, but he always gets a pass until now. Because on this tier list, he's going straight into the D tier. I know that Alexander Zverev is not a fan favorite, but I'm trying to be objective here, and objectively speaking, he was the most consistently great player on tour not named Jannik Sinner. Some way, somehow, he finished the year above Carlos Alcaraz. He won 2 Masters tournaments, played the most matches out of any top player, and because of that I just have to put him in the S tier. And last but certainly not least is my other favorite player on tour, Frances Tiafoe. And he certainly did his thing in North America with finals in Cincy and semis at the US Open, but other than that his season was kinda lackluster, so C tier it is. So this is my ranking for every ATP Top 40 player. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, take it easy, my friend.